Daddy, we're doing.
I'm doing a podcast, Dizzy. Hello and welcome to the Too Cool for School podcast. I am your host, Yannick, and on today's episode, we are looking at the life and journey of a social worker. So I've got an amazing guest with me today, and I'll allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Irene, social worker, and yeah, happy to be here.
You're more than a social worker. You do so many amazing things. So you
I
need
feel
to,
like everywhere I go, they draw it out of me.
you need to give yourself your flowers. So apart from just being a social worker, what other amazing things do you do?
Yes, I'm a social worker, but by profession, I would say, and then I'm a lecturer. Like I lecture at university. Been doing so for like 2.5 years now, and yeah, it's been monumental to kind of enter that space because I don't look like one. So it's like, how do you fit in? Amongst that, like I do wellbeing events for social workers, which is social work and brunch. And I don't know what else I do. At the moment, I'm in the process of, not in the process of actually starting a young people's home to just help young people achieve as much as they should achieve because obviously they're ostracized most times. And I'm tired of that cycle and I'm tired of being on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
So if you've got an issue, do something about it. So yeah.
That's amazing. And, to start off, I want to sort of reflect on what inspired you to go into social work. And I also want us to sort of reflect, because I'm not sure if you'll remember, but I...
Don't go there.
No, it's nothing. No, it's nothing.
School.
It's nothing crazy like that. But I remember when you were studying.
Yeah.
For social work.
It was a drag.
And I remember there was times when I'll be on the phone to you and whatever else, and I was thinking to myself, damn, this social work course just sounds like
Mad.
nuts.
Yeah.
The amount of stress that you sounded like, you were going through. But in the moment, I don't think I really took the time to ask, actually, why are you doing this course? I just saw it as another degree and didn't really understand, the social work processes and whatever else. So I think it will be good for, the audience and the people that, connect with you and engage with you online to sort of understand what inspired you, what is your why behind why you became a social worker.
Can I be real?
Yeah.
So I didn't start off wanting to do social work. So I actually did psychology first as a BSc in Leicester, but I went there to rave it up. I'm not going to lie. All my friends were going Leicester or Loughborough and I thought I'm going to be part of that. I'm going to go. I thought I could come out of that degree with being a psychologist. And that was far from the outcome. I couldn't really do much with that degree in terms of what I wanted to do. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? And to be honest with you, my mum's a social worker, my dad's a social worker, my sister's a social worker. I've got a whole family of social workers.
Wow, it's in the genes.
It's in the genes.
Yeah.
But they're all in adult social work. And I worked with them in their business. So obviously they run a supported accommodation for adults. So I just thought, this is not for me. I work better with young people. So I went in to study social work. They were like, just try it, see how you get on. And what's the loss from that? It's 18 months, just do it. But when I went into it, it was so hard because of the fact that I was working as well. I was studying the course. It just wasn't clicking. But I think after my time studying social work, that's when I started to clock, I actually like this. Because in the degree, you do a placement.
Yeah.
A first placement, a second placement. My first placement was in a domestic violence agency. And I was just I saw a whole other world in terms of what people go through, how children experience domestic violence. Even though it's mum and dad, the children are also experiencing that as well.
Of course.
My second placement was in a school, and then I saw a different side of working with children. And I just thought, this is amazing, and I can see how we can impact the lives of families and not just children. But beyond that, obviously in placement, you only have so much you can do in a school or in a domestic violence agency. But as a social worker, you've got resources, you've got money, you've got things that can back you to actually change lives. So yeah, that I went in there, you know, full vim and ready to kind of change everyone's life. But when I got into the job, it wasn't like that though.
Well,
It wasn't actually like that. It's a lot harder. You're coming up against a lot of
obstacles, yeah.
obstacles, people slamming doors in your face that will not know you. But that's where I found my approach to social work, which is what obviously brought good results to local authorities. So yeah.
That's amazing. And you mentioned earlier that the family parents did like adult social work and you did children's social work. And sometimes people, when they hear social work, they just think it encompasses everything. Apart from adult and children, are there other aspects
there's
of
so many
social
aspects
work?
of social work. There's child protection. There's obviously child in need. There's adult social work. There's adolescent social work, which is obviously like CSE gangs, missing, like all those kind of stuff. There's there's forensic social work, whereby, you know, sometimes you work with people that maybe are in mental health, they've got arsonists and things like that. You might work in the hospital, you might work in a crisis team, whereby you're just dealing with people who have like mental health issues and they need like consistent support in the community. So you might be working in like a ward. There's various types of social work. And there's also, what is a bit of a taboo is the privatized element of social work, which is obviously what I went into after years of practicing. And that's not spoken about a lot because people are scared to talk about it because the two don't seem to mix. But there's so many areas. Like I said, there's children, there's adults. In those two main areas, there's different disciplines.
Yeah.
And it's about you and what you're actually interested in. But it's something for everybody.
And do you need to specialize, or do you need to do another course, or do you just need to say, this is what I want to do and I'm going to commit to that?
Yeah, so I always say, because obviously now I teach people to become social workers.
Yeah.
So it's almost like full circle. But at the beginning, I remind my students, go into social work and your aim is to find your niche, find what you're good at. Because that's where, not only will you be known for it, but number two, that's where you'll really impact lives.
Yeah.
If you're going in there as a day job and you're just doing your job, you know, Bob's your uncle, I'm going to do my assessments here and there. You don't really know what your skill is or what change you're trying to bring. You'll just burn out. I think they say the average social worker's lifespan, well, not lifespan, but career span is about 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, and I said that the reason why I've lasted maybe like 12 years plus is because of the fact that I found my niche. I know what I'm good at and I stick to that.
Well, that's amazing.
There's space for everybody.
That's amazing. And I think, you know, in every profession that you work in, you know, there's going to be things that you pick up in, you know, the early years of you going into the workplace, whatever that field may be, and it sort of shapes the way you know, you commit to your practice in this current moment. Is there anything that you sort of saw when you first started, or you sort of did when you first started, that you said, you know what, like, this is gonna shape the way I, you know, practice?
It was direct work. You know, when I said to you, I told students to find their niche, that was my niche. Like, direct work is like when you work with young people to champion their voice. Because a lot of the time, you know, you're talking to mum and talking to dad, but you don't really know what the child is saying. You don't really know what their views are. You don't really know how their experience, what's the day in the life of that child is. As a manager, say, for example, if you're my social worker and I'm saying to you, okay, so tell me about the Billy family, for example. I don't just want to hear what mum and dad are saying. What is the day in the life of the child like? Yeah. And I feel like as I started to kind of focus on that and build my skills in that, and I mean like reading outside the box, so designing my own toolkits for children to be able to speak, to be able to showcase their voice, figuring out ways of best communicating with children. That's where I started to see a turnaround, because a lot of my cases obviously were in court and the judges rarely hear the child's voice. They might ask for it, but it's the social worker that wrote that. How are you showing that it's the child that actually said that? What is the child's feelings? Because as much as you're in the family's life, you're actually there to protect the child. Yeah. How are you protecting them if you don't know their voice? Yeah. And that's the area that I decided to focus on.
That's powerful. And I think that's the same for me. Like, when I first got into education, it was about, you know, how do you amplify the young person's voice? And also, how do you amplify, like, the parents' voice as well? I used to make sure that the young person, you know, and the parents' voices are both heard. And that's something that I still focus with, or that I still do now intentionally. within the workplace.
So
I know
important.
you mentioned earlier as well that what you expected social work to be at the beginning was not how it turned out to be. How drastic are we talking about in terms of like your expectation to what it actually was?
Well, when I first went into social work, I expected it to be families that want to work with you.
Okay.
They're here for the help.
They're
A lot
not-
of families weren't here for the help.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of pivot and change my approach. And do you know what? I kind of had to think, if it was you, Irene, how would you want someone to approach you? So I teach my students this now. And a lot of the time when I work with families or new families, I'm like, look, I know what, obviously in the back of my mind, I have what the concerns are. I know what the concerns are on the case notes, for example, and the hazards are. I know all of that stuff. But I come in there with a blank canvas and I'll just say, look, I know you don't want me here. I know you don't want to work with me. Tell me what your story is. Because at the end of the day, we have a lot of things on our system, but your version of that story might be different. Let me hear from you. And a lot of parents are like, they're not used to a social worker allowing them to share their story or share their voice, because it's almost like, no, you're the problem and we're taking your kids away.
Yeah. And I think, like, reflecting on what you've just said, and I don't think, from my experience in working with families and working with social workers, I don't think it's necessarily I don't want to work with you as the person Irene, but I don't want to work with the title.
Yeah, the name, the title.
Like
yeah.
when parents just hear
They're rattled.
social worker, they're rattled. So I feel, and I don't know where this has come from, but I feel like they hear that and think my kids are going to be taken away from me.
It's the media. The media plays that part. We talk about it in uni, like the media. If you go to the front page, it's always a social worker didn't do this, or the social worker took this child away, or the social worker missed this. And obviously the media will champion the worst parts of social work, but they don't talk about the good parts. They don't talk about the parts where you actually make change. And let's be honest, in every profession, there's like people that don't do their job well.
Yeah.
And that will always sometimes, precede the title as opposed to the ones that do a good job. So I guess it's about you and you as a person, your legacy. If you're going into social work, what legacy are you trying to leave? What change are you trying to make? What's your point of going in there? Because if you're going in there to make money, first of all, you'd be frustrated. And secondly, you won't have the heart for it.
Yeah.
You won't make change.
And how do you teach your students, one, to try and change that narrative of how they're perceived, and two, how do you get them to face the reality that doors are going to be slammed because the people that need the help will not want the help because of your title. Like, how do you get them to face that reality and not to take it like
personally? So that's something that I've tried to infuse into my teaching from the jump. A lot of students will say, oh, we never know what social work is really like until we go out there. They don't teach us that in uni. So I've made it a point to use life case examples, to use my experience, to talk about when I had doors slammed in my face and how I managed it, how I didn't internalize those experiences. And I feel like from sharing those personal experiences, it's almost like, oh my gosh, is this what it's really like? Then you start to think, am I on the right course? Then you start to think, do I really want to do this? And it gives you a different mindset for when you go out on placement, because the first time they'll go out in the world is when they're in placement. And they get time to kind of practice and refine their skills. But it's just about being real and saying, you know what, at the end of the day, our title comes with a negative connotation. And it's about how you change that narrative, how you approach them. If it was you having a social worker at your door, would you want someone kind of demanding or speaking to you in a certain tone? No, speak with respect, because just as they're a person, just as you're a person, they're a person. Just as they're a family, you've got a family. So do as you would unto others, If you want it done to yourself, do it unto others. Yeah. There's a saying around that. But yeah, it's just about good practice, really. Yeah.
No, that's important. That's important. And reflecting on when you first started on... Because you do the placement after you've finished...
No, you do the placement during. Yeah, first year, you got 70-day placement. Yeah. Second year, you've got 100-day placement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then third year is...
There's no third year.
There's no-
Unless you're doing a degree. So your
Okay,
first year
okay.
might be just... Depends if you're doing a master's or a degree. So if you're doing a master's, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
If you're doing a degree, it's 3. In the first year, I think you're just learning. The second year, you're on placement. And third year, you're on placement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, reflecting on when you started as a newbie, because I'm thinking about like me starting as a newbie in education, and one of the biggest challenges that I felt I had was like, because of my age, I started as a head of year and I was 26. So it's like the students thought, oh, that's man them, like, that's my people. And the teachers, because some of them were a bit old, it's like who does this guy like think he is, sort of thing. So trying to sort of find, you know, my feet
That was hard.
was difficult. So I'm trying to think, like, as a social worker, like what was like one or some of the biggest challenges you faced, like as a newbie?
As a newbie, it was parents saying, do you have kids? Do you even have kids? Like, how old are you? Because I looked young at that time. I don't know how young I look now.
Yeah, you still look young now. Yeah.
I don't know how young I looked then. But it was just like, do you have kids? As in, what do you know about you know, life as a parent? How old are you? How long have you been in social work? When did you qualify? But then you have to kind of own it and be like, look, I understand your concerns, but we're here in regards to this. And if it's about my qualifications, I'm qualified enough to have this discussion. But empathizing with the fact that, you know what, yeah, maybe I do look young, but it doesn't take away from my ability to do this job.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of own it. But let me be real with you. It doesn't just stop there, because even in the job that I'm in now, none of my colleagues look like me. I'm not saying in terms of like race, there's probably 1 or 2 blacks, but in terms of like age.
Yeah.
So I've faced that throughout my career, but it's almost like standing on your qualifications, standing on your knowledge, and knowing that I know what I bring to the table, and diverting any conversations that try and belittle you away from your forefront, really. Yeah. It will happen if you're young, though. Facts.
No, that's important. That's important. And you know what? It's been amazing to see like how your journeys sort of evolved, because I remember on socials, and I was following your when I came back to socials because of the podcast, because I'm not on any social media platforms, and I came back and I was following, you know, certain people within like education, social work, you know, well-being, etc. I was like, yeah, the social work planner, like that, they're going in, like they've got some amazing content. I'm looking for stuff. Like, hold on, like that's Irene. Then all of a sudden, like lecturer, and I'm just like, wow. And like, how have things evolved, you know, for you, and how did you get from like the social, just being a social worker, to now you're a lecturer, and now you've got like the social work planner, amongst the many other things that you do, because I know you and other people may not know, but that's for another time. But how has things evolved for you?
You've got to see it as a timeline, because obviously I've been in social work like since 2013.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. But one thing I haven't done is allowed myself to stay still in the career. I came into social work as a business head anyway, because prior to social work, I already had like the fashion stuff that I was doing back in the day.
Yeah.
So I had a mindset of, look, I want to practice, but I want to go into this knowing that I want to make an impact, but then impact the next generation of social workers. I always had that at the end as my end goal. But I think going through practice, I just got stuck in doing social work. It was only until I started to shift my mindset into what's my niche? What gaps can I fill? Because like I said, when I first started social work, I struggled, man. I had I went into child protection, which was a rookie move because it was so tough back then. A lot of the things we have now, we didn't have back then. And it was a lot more, I would say, dangerous because there's not much protection. And through the gaps that I found, like, for example, not having support by managers changing, like 6 different managers in the space of a few months, not knowing where I'm coming, where I'm going, finding my own feet, it kind of made me a hard nut in social work very, very quickly. And I think through being persistent and through good work, I was being noticed by like senior managers and directors and things like that. And I moved around. I didn't really move around too much, but moved to different councils, for example, to just gain my experience in different areas of social work. And yeah, I just felt like I found my niche, and I just said to myself, you know what? I'm moving away from just practicing. I think what's important for me now is how I'm impacting the next generation of social workers, and how am I ensuring that they don't experience what I experienced, hence the social work planner. Because it's literally like a cheat code for anyone who's just starting in social work. It tells you everything you need to do, how to chair a meeting, how to do a visit, how to write up the visit, you know, how to be organised, self-care, all the things that I wasn't told when I first started. Find a gap and you solve it.
That's amazing. And I've like anyone that I know that's even studying now, I just share your social media page with them, because I just think, you know, it's amazing, and it is about, you know, the impact, and it's, you know, it's not about, you know, us just staying still. Like I still work, you know, in education for a local authority, doing, you know, consultancy work around like SMH needs, school exclusion, like reduction and whatever else, and even going into doing this and creating this platform, it was all around, you know, educating and the mindset behind it was not only for our community to be having these conversations around you know, social work and these other, you know, these other key topics that I bring to the platform, but it's about making an impact. And one of the things that has, you know, sort of come about recently for me, because I wasn't aware of this before, like the amount of like my ex-students who like watch the podcast. But I didn't know. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, sir, you know, like, like we're locking in, like all the man them, like we watch it, like some of the girls, like blah blah blah. And because of the amount of time that I spent at the school, like I've got students now in uni. Like my first year group, they would have left, I think. Second year group, they're in uni. And my last year group are doing their A-levels currently. So it's like offering them opportunities like this where they can hear from someone with like such amazing experience, and they know, actually, I want to do social work. I can go in to uni, follow, you know, the social work planner, like follow Irene online and whatever, and just follow that journey and better my, like this is the impact that, you know, we're talking about. So just giving them that access, which you know,
so important.
yeah, which I think is amazing.
It's really important to have like as much as there's the social work plan, there's also like obviously free resources on just from listening to the page. Like it's almost like the cheat code. And you asked the second question, so I forgot to answer about the lecturing element of it. So obviously I transitioned out of practice and went into lecturing purely because I wanted to teach the next generation of social workers. Like I said, when I went in there, when you go into uni, they don't teach about real life social work. So I went in there wanting to do exactly that. Don't get me wrong, I had to study. It wasn't easy. You can't just go in and lecture. But I was determined to study again and get my qualifications to become a lecturer. And yeah, like it's about impact. As I said, if that's the only reason why we're doing these things. We're in a position now, we're no longer in school. We're in a position now where we can make impact. So yeah, why not?
Yeah, that's important. And with the social work planner, I think one of the things that that I find amazing that you emphasize is like the notion around like effective planning, you know, like paperwork, managing caseloads and whatever else, because that's as important as the sort of direct work, you know, that we are doing. Like if the paperwork is not good, if it's not up to scratch, if you know if it's not streamlined, it makes the job, you know, 10 times harder, not only for yourself and your colleagues, but especially if you're working like, you know, multi-agency, like it makes it difficult. Like what was the thinking behind you highlighting that element as a key element for all social workers to essentially say to them, listen, you need to be on point with this?
Beyond social work, I think my motto in life, like, is just move with character and integrity. Like, your work precedes you. Before anybody meets you, they're going to read your work.
Yeah.
If your work is shabby, if you copied and pasted, that's how they're going to look at you. Do you know what I mean? So it's so important for people to recognize that if you're not good at doing something, find a way to learn how to do a good job of it. Because when your work goes before the courts, if there's spelling errors and if there's, no chronology or no sequence of how things have been undertaken or no evidence of the work that you've done, it's just showing that you're a lazy social worker. If that's how you want to be perceived, then fair enough. But you got to bear in mind that in years down the line, children become adults and they might want to come back and see their files. If they ask for their files, what are they going to see? That Irene, the social worker, was lazy and didn't want to write up proper case notes or didn't want to write up comprehensive reports. And it's long, don't get me wrong, you asked the question, that's so key. Unfortunately, in social work, the paperwork is probably a little bit more than the direct work because you're working with lives, you have to evidence everything.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's statutory as
It
well.
is
isn't
statutory.
it?
Do you know what I mean? You have to evidence your work, and sometimes that can take over or overpower the direct work that you do. But I guess it's just about finding ways to make it easier. Which is what I do. I give cheat codes to make your make your reports easier. All these things that you're gonna do, you can have cheat codes by just doing good case notes.
Yeah.
And then compiling them together and into a report.
I think one of the main I've worked in various boroughs, and there's been amazing social workers that I've worked with, and there's been not so amazing social workers that I've worked with. But I think one of the things that's been consistent throughout, whether you're a good social worker or not, is the cases are complex. I'm just like,
it's getting more complex
and
as well.
From an educational perspective, we only deal with like the education side. But as a social worker, you're doing everything. How do you encourage like your students to manage, like complex caseloads when they're already juggling so much? Because I don't even know how many cases like
Depends
social
on where
workers
you are.
get.
Like some local authorities have 35 cases.
35 cases.
Sometimes you have 20. I rarely hear unless you're out far, like in those like outside areas of like UK.
Are they rag rated? So would it be like out of the 30 cases, like
it wouldn't be rag.
10 are like red, amber, green, so like the level. You can't have 30 that are all reckless.
Do you know what? You wouldn't have 30 that are all reckless, but remember, these are people. People's lives change. So one that could be all good today, tomorrow could have a complete
for sure
360 and become a high risk case. Then what do you do?
Yeah.
So the key to managing that is a question you asked, right?
Yeah.
I think you have to you need to make use of supervision with your manager, because you need to be able to talk those cases out. If you can't, you're not a lone soldier. You have a manager to be able to talk those things out with. And it's really important for you to be able to kind of prioritize and say, look, these are the cases I have. These are the ones that are most urgent. What are the ones that can wait? What are the ones that I can do next week? What are the ones that are higher risk? And kind of compartmentalize them so that you know that you're focusing on what deserves your attention and then coming back to all the other ones straight after. They're all just as important, but someone, say, for example, threatening to jump off a cliff is a lot higher risk than somebody who's missing school, for example. So you have to prioritize which one you deal with. It's just so much to do with. You can't split yourself. So, yeah. And I also tell students, like, if you're on placement and you're getting these kind of cases, you may not actually. If you're an ASYE, which is your first year in practice, and you're getting these kind of cases, sometimes speak up and say, you know what, it's a lot to manage. I can't do this. Is there any way that I can joint work this with somebody else? The answer may not always be yes, but at least you're sharing that you're concerned and it's recorded that you shared those concerns.
And you've spoken a bit, like in the intro when you mentioned that you do things around, or you have other projects around well-being.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've really tried to do, I would say more so in the last 2 or 3 years. Not when I was younger and working, because when I was younger and working, it was just everything's fun to me. But then you get to a point where it's like, oh no, actually, like work is work. Things are serious. And I don't feel like I know I didn't have a good work-life balance. Like when I was stressed, and like everyone's stress comes out in different ways. My stress was I would get bald patches.
Oh wow.
I remember I went to the barber. He was like, "Oh, you got a bald patch?" I said, "Nah, Zidane, like already, but I'm 20, 28." Then he's like, "Oh, you know what? It could be stress," but I've never thought about it. And then that's when I was like, "Yeah, you need to chill." You know, like I'll be in the office, I'll stay in the office after 6. Like I was at the school, I'm leaving with the cleaners. God strike me down if I'm lying. I know my colleagues, you know, Jermaine, Naomi, they're listening in. They'll know the cleaners used Romero.
The fact that you even know his name.
He used to say leave. Like we're closed. I used to live with the cleaners.
Oh wow.
Like, so thinking about this, I don't do that now. Now,
Good.
like,
Good.
you know,
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance. You know, I'm focused. Like when I need a break, I get a break. You know, sometimes I take annual leaves. It's not even a holiday.
You're working anyway.
Colleagues will ask, "Oh, you getting any?" Nice. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep.
It's necessary, man.
Like, you know, so
It's necessary.
I asked that to say, like, how do you encourage? Because you know it, you know what the work entails. So how do you encourage your students in the moment when they might not be experiencing the work, like the stresses of the role, because they're still studying? Like, how do you drop those gems and seeds to remind them, actually, you're still studying, but you're going to get into a world that's going to draw a lot from you? Like, how do you encourage them to sort of maintain their social, emotional, mental health and their well-being?
Number one, I start with practicing what I preach. And number two, I always say to them, start as you mean to go on.
Okay.
Be consistent with your self-care. Even in the planner, there's a page for self-care. Like, what are you actually doing for self-care? Like, are you going on holiday? Are you reading a book? Are you, like, what is it that you're doing? Because I infuse that into students from early, because they can even burn out on placement. And if you, on the social work planner page, on the weekend, you probably see a post saying, don't touch your laptop. This is not the day for you to touch your laptop. By the way, you're not getting paid for touching your laptop today. Those reminders that they're not paying you.
For sure.
Unless you're in like a hospital team, or you're in a, you know, ED team, which is obviously out of hours, emergency duty team, you shouldn't be touching your laptop, you know. And obviously some social workers don't listen, some students don't listen, but over time they kind of realize, you know what, you were actually right, because I'm doing so much out of hours and doing so much in my own time, I'm being asked, oh, do you mind if? And those do you mind ifs build up, because they know you're going to be a yes man.
Yeah.
So it's so important to kind of start as you mean to go on, so people know your boundaries. In my diary, for example, like, even though I might not take it, it doesn't matter. I have break in my calendar at a specific time of the day, and you dare not call me at that time. Unless it's an emergency, I have my own time. I tell my students, well, you know, we finished the lecture, next week I'm going on holiday.
Yeah.
And I say it to them, it's like, well, you're the lecturer. Yes, I'm the lecturer and I'm going on holiday, or I'm the social worker, I'm going on holiday.
Yeah.
And I let them know how the holiday went, because I'm trying to infuse the fact that it's important for you to take a break. It's important for you to kind of manage your mental health and feed back into yourself, because you're going to do a lot of giving. As a social worker, you're naturally giving.
Yeah.
So it's a full circle kind of thing. Start as you mean to go on.
No, that's powerful. And do you have any experience, whether it's a personal experience or having seen it with colleagues of burnout?
Of course.
And I say this to, you know, I'm not gonna name names, but I know staff members that, you know, I worked with, so I can just tell, like, they were stressed, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, you know, so and so's like off, like sick for a bit. They're sick for a bit. They never came back. So, like, I'm not sure if you had that experience.
Yeah.
Like what did it look like? When did you realize, oh crap, I'm burnt out?
I'll be transparent. There was a time towards the end of when I was practicing, I ended up in hospital.
Well,
If I show you the pictures of me being in hospital, you'd be. I don't even look like me. As in, like, tubes up my nose, face swollen, like, because. And you know what it was? It was stress. Like, I was in hospital for weeks. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't look after anyone. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't do anything. And you know, the idiot that I am, believe I had my laptop on my lap in hospital, and the nurse was just like, if you die, you know they're going to replace you tomorrow.
well.
This was only in 2021 or 2. So if you die, you know they're going to replace you tomorrow. And I just thought, you know what? Fair enough. Still didn't listen. It was only until...
Still didn't listen.
No, I still didn't. I was just, she doesn't know what I've got to do by next week.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of here. I didn't get out. I was there for time.
Well,
And not only that, I think I was added to somebody was added to my work WhatsApp group. We have a team WhatsApp group. And a new person was added in. And that was a new worker that was supposed to kind of replace me in the time that I was off. And I was just like, that's what made it hit. Like, if anything happens to me, if I die tomorrow, they've already got someone in that new group. They've got someone in that group to replace my role because I'm just a number. So self-care is more than just about looking after yourself. It's realising that if something happens to you, you're easily replaceable. So yeah, like I said, I have experienced burnout. And I think that's what gave birth to me trying to create an avenue for other social workers to have an outlet, because what my burnout looks like was maybe different to what yours would look like. It might be different to what someone else looks like, but mine was really bad. And it kind of wound down my career from my career in practicing from that time. So yeah, really scary experience actually.
but glad to see that you sort of overcome that and you're pushing on. So that's important. And sort of following up from that, like what advice would you give to, you know, any social workers who have heavy caseloads and are feeling like they're close to burnout? And that was actually going to be my follow-up question. I'm not sure how it is in the sort of social work system in terms of like management and whatever else. Like, are management receptive to that? Are they understanding of the burnout and the stress that their team are feeling?
I wouldn't say that they don't understand it. They know it, but it's who's a good manager. There's some managers that are about the numbers. They just want to have good numbers. They don't really care about you. They don't really care about, you know, burnout. They know, everyone knows about burnout, but they're not focused on your well-being. They're focused on stats. You might hear a lot of stats in social work, oh, the visit's out of time scale, or this is not done, or that's not done, or this not been submitted. Whilst those things matter, as I've been a manager, I know what it's like to have that on your neck. I also think it's important to care about your staff, and not a lot of managers do. That's because they don't know how to absorb pressure. A lot of pressure comes from the top, so the directors, the assistant directors, the service managers are asking that manager, where's this, where's that, why hasn't it been done, why is your stats not up to date? And not everybody can absorb that pressure and still maintain a stance of, no, but I'm looking after my social workers. I'm making sure that they're good, actually, because we need them to do the work and we need them to be good. But like I said, not a lot of managers have found that balance. They do get a bit rattled when you start saying, you know, I'm burning out, but it's about saying it, speaking up, and make sure it's recorded in supervision.
Yeah.
Make sure it's recorded.
Yeah, that's important. Make sure it's recorded. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I wanted to, like, when I'm thinking about like my current role, so in the local authority that I work in, you know, there's been so many instances where I'll be working with a family, they've got one social worker, and then 2 months later it's, oh, I'm leaving in the end of the month.
Yeah.
Like I've had a family that maybe in the space of like 6-7 months they've had like 4 social workers, and I'm just thinking like, what the hell is going on? Like the turnover's crazy, and as a lecturer, are people coming in? Like, are the lecture rooms filled with, you know, people who are excited and still wanting to be a part of this profession?
A lot of students come into social work not really knowing what they're getting into.
Okay.
Some do. So obviously some might have come from teaching, some might have come from nursing. Some might have come from the usual group that we work with. But others are just like kind of fresh out of life and I want to go in social work and make a difference, but they don't really know what comes with that. So it's almost like a shock horror for some of them because they're not clear on what they're getting into, if that makes sense. But it's full. Like the last cohort I taught, the last master's cohort was like, I think 45 students in the class. So it's still full, but not everybody has insight into what they're getting into until they start. Until you get a lecturer that's going to be real with you and say, this is what it's really like.
Yeah. And hopefully, you know, the stuff that you're doing in terms of like the lecturing and the social work planning is that you're creating an environment or an entry for, you know, for the new and upcoming social workers to come in with maybe not necessarily more ease because, you know, their environment is stressful, but like better equipped, you know, better equipped, you know, more knowledgeable, you know, more prepared. So I think, you know, I think that's definitely important. And I don't know why this came into my mind and it's totally random, but like the use of AI in social work, is that a thing?
It's a thing in uni. But unfortunately, we're going to have to evolve with the times and, you know, understand that it's not going away. It's actually going to take over at some point. So in uni, what we're trying to do now is figure out, you know, what's the boundary? Is this student using AI because they're trying to enhance their knowledge, or are they using it to write their assignment? The ones that use it to write their assignment automatically fail. 0, because you didn't do the work. I mean, and I can tell.
How do you tell?
I can tell.
How do you
If
tell?
I see the word foster, number one, I know Grammarly uses Z, but if I see Z's all over, if I see foster, if I see the hyphens in between your word, you don't write like that. Don't try it.
Yeah.
Like I can immediately tell. I know what students sound like.
Yeah.
I know how you write. So this assignment you wrote is not you. It just, I'm not against AI to enhance your knowledge about something. But what I am against is you being lazy and not doing the work. You got to remember, even in practice, when you're working with a family, AI doesn't know that family. AI hasn't done 10 visits and, you know, experience what life is like for that family. You have a humanistic approach to working with that family and sharing what your experiences are. AI doesn't know that person. So what they're going to give is a bog standard approach to how any social worker in any country would deal with the situation. Whereas you'd be thinking, no, you know what? When 2 social workers come, Johnny feels really intimidated, so therefore he becomes you know, recluse. He doesn't answer questions. But you're a human. You have that insight. AI doesn't.
Yeah.
So you take away the actual day in the life of that family by using AI. But it is happening. Social workers are doing it. But it's about how much time managers take to read those assessments and to see whether it actually demonstrates what it's meant to demonstrate.
Yeah.
And it's also up to the parents as well to read that and think, well, that's not what my family life is like. And but it's becoming a new thing.
That's
unfortunately.
interesting. I wanted to ask as well if there's like one piece. No, before I ask that, if there's one thing that you would change, like if you would go back and say, you know what, when I first started off and I didn't have the social work planner and I didn't have, you know, and I wasn't a lecturer and whatever else, like this is the one thing that I would change within my practice, like what would that be?
The one thing I would change about my practice is
And you may have nothing.
I think one thing is I've learned how to do it now, speaking up. Because the times that I have spoken up, especially when it comes to young people putting themselves in danger and things like that, it's one time it saved a life. Because I was like, you know what, I don't agree with you placing this child in this particular area because they know this person, that person, that person. And they're like, yeah, but it's the cheapest placement. But at the end of the day, that person being in that area nearly got them stabbed and killed. But because for some reason they couldn't go in that place, and they had, I think, one child that wasn't coming out for them to come in. And that is what stopped that child going into that placement. But people who were after that young person were waiting for him. because he was talking too much. He was telling them the way he was going to go.
Yeah.
So had I not spoken up, something would have happened. And in other areas as well, like not speaking up, for example, there's no trail of your feelings. There's no trail of your self-care. There's no trail of, how you're managing your cases. There needs to be a trail, because if anything happens to you or happens to anybody you're working with, they'll be like, but you never told us this.
Yeah.
So you can't stand on anything. You have no evidence of what you're saying. So speaking up is something that I wish I learned earlier, but I was too scared to do it, because it's almost like if I speak up, they might think I'm, typical black woman syndrome, if that makes sense, or not being able to blend with my team. But it's not really that. It's actually safety.
Yeah.
More than anything.
And I think that's something that we've got to be like more intentional with. And from your experience, like, why do you think that is, that you didn't speak up?
Because I just,
and why do you think others don't speak up? Because I think it's very common.
Yeah. Number one, I'm conscious of my skin, and I'm conscious of the fact that I automatically can get seen as an angry black woman, because sometimes speaking up comes with a skill. You have to learn how to do it, in a sense of you can be assertive and not rude, but not everybody has that balance in knowing how to do that. So I think for me, the most important thing is saying how you feel. And the reason why I may not have done it before, because I just didn't want to cause drama. I didn't want to, I also didn't believe in my source. I didn't believe in my knowledge. I didn't believe in what I bring to the table. It was almost like they know better than me, when I realized that they were just winging it, actually. I think there was one incident with one of my, what's a student, but it's an ASYE that I was supervising. The ASYE is someone who's in their first year of practice.
Okay.
And an incident happened with one of her cases, and the service manager was like, well, why didn't you speak up? And I just looked at her and I just said, I understand how you feel, but it's important for you to speak up about your feelings when you're in this meeting. Even though I wasn't there, someone was there with you. Why didn't you say what you saw?
Yeah. That's interesting.
So, yeah.
No, that's important, man. And I hope, people listening in,
Speak
like,
up.
no matter what profession, you work in, if there's any issues, if there's anything that's sitting on your heart that you feel like, actually, this doesn't sit right with me, or,
that's important.
this feels like an injustice, or like the example that you gave, like, you not speaking up is going to have an impact on the welfare of someone's life. Like, you need to speak up. So I think that was important sharing. And just to finish off, as we finish off, so I've got a twofold question. The first part is, what advice would you give to any new social worker up and coming? Like, just one piece of advice for a new social worker up and coming. And the second part is, what piece of advice would you give to a current social worker who is saying, you know what, I want to take my practice to the next level. I want to be a top practitioner. Like, it's like both social workers, but two different, timelines. One's just coming in, fresh as a baby, and there's another one who's in the practice, but they're like, you know what, I'm seeing what Irene's doing. I'm seeing what, Nana's doing. I'm seeing what all of these people are doing. It's time to level up. So what advice would you give to them?
A newbie coming in, I would say get a mentor. Might make your journey a lot easier. No, it will make your journey a lot easier. A mentor doesn't have to be somebody you pay. It can be somebody that's in your team that's a lot more experienced, that you can see that their practice is good. Learn from them, ask to see their work, or go in the system and look at how they write their assessments. Are they always getting praised for it? If they're getting praised for it, why? Imitate that. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there's resources that are out there, on the platform. There's a social work planner. There's other platforms that are out there, that podcasts that are out there that talk about social work and real life practice. And it's really important for you to kind of rub shoulders with people that are a bit more experienced.
Of course.
Because you pick up things, what you do want to take on, what you don't want to take on, or you like how they practice, if you don't like how they practice. It's almost like using different things around you to form a new you.
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's important to figure out what practice you like, imitate the ones you like, and take away the things that you don't like.
Yeah.
For the experienced social worker, he said.
The experience. The ones that want to be you.
I don't know how to answer that question. Let me think. Okay. The experienced social worker, what I would say is if you're trying to stay in practice, don't be scared to apply for the role above.
Okay.
Because sometimes we allow ourselves to just stay in the same role. Like we do it for 10 years and it's almost like, where am I going with this? Am I just going to continue doing the same thing? Some people don't aspire for more and that's fine. Other people do aspire for more. But if you're one that's comfortable in your job, stay there. That's fine. No problem. Not everybody has to go up. But if you do want to enhance in your career, apply for the next role up. Go from the social worker to the senior practitioner. Go from senior practitioner to the AP. Go from being an AP to being a manager. Go from being a manager to being a service manager. That's the trajectory. But you have to bear in mind that not everyone wants to stay in practice. So for me, I went into management. I just said, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to get up to service manager level. Yeah. Mainly because, as I said, prior to coming to social work, I always had a business head.
Yeah.
And I was always going to go in that direction because I felt that that's where me as Irene could make more impact. So in terms of finding a gap and solving that gap, and also in terms of my practice, I thought, you know what, I'm good at teaching. I'm good at working with ASYEs. I'm good at working with students. I'm going to study and get my PE qualification and train those people. And from training those people, I found that I want to go the next level up now and teach the next generation of social workers. So I studied again and went into lecturing. So there's different avenues, but you've got to figure out, do you want to stay in practice or do you want to move out of practice? And if you don't want to be in practice at all, how are you going to privatize your knowledge?
Yeah.
Because you can sell your knowledge and still make money, no?
Of course. Yeah. That's powerful. You've given me a lot of food for thought, and you know it's been amazing just to hear your journey, and I know that you'll be an inspiration to so many others who are listening in. So thank you again. For joining us. So that has been the Too Cool for School podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on our social media platforms. Thank you.